Hello and welcome to the Studio at Home Roundtable, where we're discussing workplace trends, hybrid working, technology and systems in partnership with Shure. I'm joined in this discussion by Rob Smith, Gavin Stubbs, Jason Oliver, Alison Davis and Shuvankar Pramanick. Welcome to you all. What a year it's been. Shuvankar, I'd like to start with you. What solutions should technology leaders be pursuing in order to adapt to workplace trends?
See, it belongs to a healthcare industry. It's a healthcare industry. We have total almost 30 odd hospitals across India and across the continent. In healthcare industry, when this COVID era came, basically the first challenge was how we commute with the patients first. Then we came the technology solutions for the other team members and other team leaders also. Very first challenge was how we can extend to the service to the patients, how we can take care of the patients, consultations, patients, diagnostics, part of things. So we took a different technology like for remote consultations, for remote, you can say, image processing systems, CT scan, MRI, X-ray, all things should be reported remotely. So first we took that challenge in that COVID first 2-3 months area. Then we came back to how we can save our employee, who is the front workers of that business, mainly like other than doctors. See, we can't help nurse, some healthcare workers who are directly in touch with the patients, but still maximum we just segregate those people who are working on the back of these healthcare workers. So we took different collaborations, technology, different remote kind of workspace, so that all the workflow should go smooth in that sense. So like total our Indian management office, total corporate office was sitting and they work from home. Total entire decision making peoples, all strategy making people. So their workflow was intact due to this kind of technology introduced in our systems.
So thank you, Shuvankar. We'll talk in a moment about what worked and what might not have worked so well. But Gavin, can I ask you the same question? What solutions should you be pursuing in order to adapt to these new workplace trends?
I think, employee needs are changing. That's very clear. They were changing before the pandemic, and obviously as we're coming out of the pandemic now, it started to really accelerate. So for me, I think it's really about designing or investing in solutions that really enhance the experience. Because with this hybrid working environment will continue, but the next normal isn't really clear. So, we need the office or the workplace will be a destination. So you need to invest to create an environment that is supportive of that. So that's the first thing. But with a dispersed workforce and with a mobile workforce, for me, there's still a lot of work to do for people to move away from some of the legacy infrastructure that maybe they have, and then maybe that's holding them back a little bit. So still, once we talk a lot about digital transformation, I still think there's a lot of work still to do in that regard that will enable people to be a lot more flexible. So that's the first thing. And then, we're all used to video conferencing. We're all used to sitting in front of screens these days, which is great, but we've got to continue to evolve and invest in those things and to ensure, I think in that hybrid working environment, so that we don't lose people along the way and that we remain inclusive. Because you're going to have people in the office, but you're still going to have people at home. So you still need to continue to invest in that.
Absolutely. There are always people at the end of technology, aren't there? Alison, I'd like to come to you. What solutions should technology leaders be pursuing in this strange new hybrid world?
It is an interesting new world. And actually, I would reflect that we haven't really hit peak hybrid yet. It feels like we've gone from all in the office, or in my case, I'm the CIO for the Natural History Museum. So in my case, all in the museum with the dinosaurs, to all being at home. And I'm hoping that somewhere down the line we can find ourselves in a really hybrid situation. Collaboration tools are obviously key. So I won't dwell on that because that's been picked up. But I think the other thing for me is understanding how we can make ourselves geographically agnostic. So more cloud, for example, so we're not fixed with a data center that is tied to one location, but we have more cloud capability and we can serve these things up anywhere. And also understanding that the perimeter of the organization has changed. And we've had people working at home before, but never the way we are now. So actually that we've got a much bigger boundary to the organization, and picking up on that with the sort of security solutions we're putting in place and really catering to that much more diffuse workforce in terms of those capabilities, I think are going to be where some of the investments come as well.
Thank you. Yes, well, certainly this last year has accelerated everything, hasn't it? Jason, if I can come to you, you're at the University of Sussex. Are you working in a hybrid workplace, or has it gone, as Alison said, from real life to remote working?
It's blended. Throughout the entire pandemic, we've had students living on campus, and it is their permanent residence. At different times throughout the pandemic, we've had people in classrooms. And so it has very much been hybrid for us. And for that reason, I think that the two things that are most prominent for us, both have been over the last year, but also going forward, are trying to figure out ways that technology can bring more equity to the way that our students learn and the way that our staff are able to do their job. Clearly, it's imbalanced, and because we had to introduce change at pace, we never nailed it perfectly, but students that are in a lecture theatre having the lecture given to them at the same time as people who are at home or connected in remotely, it's not equitable. It's not well balanced at this point, and it's an ongoing thing that we're having to work around. But the other side of that actually links back to what Alison was saying, and it's around moving more of those services to become browser-based. It's giving everybody equal opportunity to access the technology through a browser, so that that's the lowest common denominator, not the piece of equipment that they're actually working on. And I think as we move forward, there'll be much more focus on us providing a better balance, so that, as again Alison said, we become geographically agnostic. You can learn and you can work to the best of your abilities no matter where you are in the world.
Yeah, that point about equity is a very good one, and I'm sure we'll come back to it. But Rob, tell me about the solutions that you should be pursuing in the new workplace.
You know, I think Jason put it very well. And I think before we get to solutions, we have to define what we're trying to achieve. And I think, you know, the technology and the solutions have got to be completely transparent. You know, the student who's learning from home has got to, as far as possible, have the same experience as the student who's in the classroom or lecture theatre, and the same for a corporate meeting room. So the solutions that, you know, we need to design as technologists are really making those voices heard from wherever you are, you know, being able to feel that you're present in the room and that the technology isn't a barrier, you know, and good quality audio is part of that. Obviously, that's something we've been focusing on for only 95 years, but good quality video is and seamless data sharing. So it's making it as easier as possible for the non-technology person to be part of the meeting, be part of the lecture, and making the technology invisible to the experience, which is difficult.
Well, it's
and does require high levels of technology, but it should be invisible. It's
still a challenge, and this challenge of inclusivity in certain industries like education is a real one. Anybody can answer this, just put your hand up if you want to, but how has the last 12 months challenged any preconceptions you had about what works for your business and what doesn't?
I mean, sure, as a provider to remote meetings and things, you'd think we were way ahead of it ourselves. But, you know, before COVID happened, we were having conversations in management teams around the world about hybrid working or remote working. And I guess one thing that we've got from COVID is we've stress tested that. We know what works and doesn't work. And it's actually, we've maintained full staff engagement throughout the period, and virtually everyone's working from home at the moment. So I guess that's what has worked and what we've learned from it.
So you were ahead of the game, you think?
Technologically, yes, but actually work practices wise and perceptions of various people, no, we weren't. But we've learned the same as everyone else has, that what is possible, which is great.
I think that there's many things that we could probably go on all day talking about the positives and the negatives of this situation. One of the really, really important things for me that's come through is around culture. The feeling that you have to be present to be able to contribute, I think, is less apparent now than it's ever been. And I think at all levels of our organisation, there's acceptance now that you can make meaningful contribution and you can do fantastic work without having to be in the room. And I think that's really, really important for us moving forward. There's a number of organisations I've worked at where there is that view that if you're not in the room, you're missing something, or your point's not heard. And I hope that that's behind us now. And that's a big cultural shift for many organisations, particularly in the in the public sector, where there has been a culture for a long time about you needing to be there to get a point across. I think now we're in a position where hopefully we'll go back to that previous point. The geographical agnostic perspective is apparent, and it does mean that recruitment has opened up whole new channels for us, because you don't have to live in Sussex to work at the University of Sussex, and you can get best of breed from anywhere, which opens up a whole new pool of talent to us.
I think there has to be trust on both sides, doesn't it? That's quite clear, employees and employers. Yes, Gavin.
Yeah, so I work for a a flexible workspace provider called Clockwise. So we're a relatively new business, been around for a few years. But one of the things that we're focusing on is developing our sites in the region. So it goes back to your point around the geographical location and not needing to be in, for example, in London, or to Jason's point around East Sussex to actually work at the university. Our strategy is very much around developing sites in the regions that mean that, you've got people don't want to travel to London to work these days. I've moved out of London, because I don't need to be in London to work there. So, and we see more of that, the levelling up agenda that's happening across the UK that the government's backing. It's really works for us as a business. I think that's fantastic, because, we've got sites all across the UK, people in Leeds that can cut their commute. If they need to go to the office, or they need a space to work and collaborate, they've got something local without having to travel hundreds of miles or spend an hour in the car to get there. So for me, that has been something that really works. But the flexibility to be able to come and go as you please, I think again is something else which I think before the pandemic, I was a little bit skeptical about personally skeptical about flexibility as a model, but actually people really appreciate that. If they want to come and go, they can come and go, and I think we'll see more of that as time comes on.
Thanks. Yes, I've been a long-term proponent of flexible working. I'm actually leading the Future Ways of Working programme for the museum. So as we look at how we come out of this and how we benefit from taking some of the lessons, I'm very interested to do that. And for a long time, I've said, as long as I've got my laptop and a connection and some form of desk, I can work just about anywhere. So it wasn't so much my preconceptions I found it challenged, but I think this has challenged the preconceptions of a lot of managers who felt that unless they had their staff physically with them, the staff wouldn't deliver, and all of those sorts of things, which is something that I have been arguing against for some years. So that was nice. And what I think we have seen, which has been a huge benefit, is going back to Jason, is that equity, that when you're all on Zoom or Teams or whatever platform, that people have equality of interaction. I was saying this in a previous studio, that we've had feedback from people that it's much easier to interact with senior staff. It breaks down the hierarchy. We have an outpost of the museum at Tring, which tends to feel that it's a bit out on a limb from South Ken, which is the big building that everyone knows. And they've felt much more engaged with things. So I think that's been a real benefit, and that's broken down that preconceived idea. I think as we move forward, the challenge is going to be, as we get into the more hybrid environment, how we avoid that risk of the gravitational pull, if you like, of the meeting room, and a lot of people being in the meeting, and then the people who are on the virtual platforms feeling more disenfranchised again. So I think that's one of the areas, maybe looping back to technical solutions. I'm not sure there are really good tech solutions in this space. So that's one of the areas where I'd like to see really much better tech solutions developed so that we can truly support that hybrid environment.
Yeah, and it also is obviously very difficult for some people working from home, isn't it? Yes, Jason, then I'll go to Shuvankar. Yeah.
I more or less agreed with what Jason told. Basically, if we would have belongs to any IT organizations, the IT company, this remote working and how collaboration tools, technology would have more effective. But since we are handling IT as a service to a particular industry, in that case, hybrid is the best one, and that was a total cultural change which we saw. And basically, there are many pros and cons in this hybrid models also. And now employer are little bit concerned whether the productivity output is coming optimized on a manner or not, something like that. Even difficulty to maintain productive routines also, over politicized workplace also. So there are a lot of challenges coming in where IT as a service to organizations.
Yeah, I think one of my big hopes going forward, as we embrace flexible working and hybrid working, is that we address one of the issues that's been paramount in IT departments for many years, and that's the issue of diversity. I think for many people, it's not a comfortable environment to walk into a room full of men for some of the chat that goes on. And certainly, I think by flexible working and becoming more geographically agnostic, it allows you to bring people into a team that might have ordinarily not wanted to come to that environment. It allows you to bring a much more varied range of people into the space. And I hope that it becomes a far more attractive opportunity for different people as we move forward. Certainly my daughter's 8 years old, and I would really, really hope that in 10 years' time or 13 years' time, it's a really attractive opportunity for her to come into an IT department, and that it's made up in a very different way than it is now. I think this is a real opportunity for us to bring diversity into our teams.
Yes, I'm going to pick up on the diversity point as a woman in IT, and Jason talked about. So I have to defend the workplace. I think it's moved on an enormous amount. So I don't think that physical workplaces are difficult to work in as a woman, and I've certainly found all my colleagues always respectful, and that's not just because I'm in the senior role. I'm not sure from the workplace attitudes that we haven't made progress, but certainly from the flexible working. And as I said earlier, I think I'm a working mum. I've worked since my kids were born, and they're now 23 and 19. I've been working all that time, and it's been really important to me to be able to maintain my work-life balance. Actually, I hate work-life balance. I've used this twice today, and I don't approve it. But work balance or life balance, because it's not just about work and life. It's work, it's home, it's some of me somewhere in that, I hope. And so I think that flexibility of working, and I'm very lucky to have worked for organisations that have allowed me a degree of latitude in managing my own time, having a partner who's been very supportive, all those things. But I really hope that flexible working, not just for women, but for everyone who has responsibilities outside the workplace, is something that will allow us to manage our balance better. And that will enable people to keep working for longer, be more fulfilled while they're working. I have a big belief that what I want is people while they're working for me to feel motivated, even if they move on and do something else in their future. That what I want is to have that experience be the best it can be, because then they'll give me their best work and we'll have good memories afterwards.
Good, thank you, Alison. I think this last year has really accelerated the option. I remember talking about flexible working years and years ago, but there was a lack of trust, a lack of technology. It just wasn't happening. Rob, you wanted to come in.
That's a really good point by Alison and Jason again. It's, the fact if we can move away from focusing on people being present from 9 to 5 sat in a particular chair and focus more about what do we need them to do, and then empower them and trust them to do the tasks that they've been assigned. And then the hybrid working or flexible working solution supports that. And people are in the office when they need to be in the office. You go to the office to interact with your colleagues, and you work from home when that's a better time to do it, or when your personal circumstances dictate. And then going back to the technological solutions, we empower people to do all that. I think we'll see, and I think there's been some studies already showing that productivity improves in those situations. So despite what many managers fear about not being able to look out of their glass window on their office and see all their staff arrayed before them, people do more when they're able to work in a way that best suits them. I think it's a real opportunity.
I think you're right about the productivity. I think there's another round table on that, so we'll all have to have a look at it. But how will your workflows and processes evolve alongside this hybrid working? Are these systems going to change as you go along now? Your work processes and systems. Alison?
So if I can comment on that, I think there are 3 areas that we're looking at under our Future Ways of Working programme that we need to evolve. One fundamental is culture. We need to understand how the culture of the organisation supports management by outcomes, and how we build a culture of trust, as you said, I think Rob said, not to be reliant on being able to see people sitting outside your glass office and keeping an eye on them. So there's a lot of cultural prerequisites that need to be there, and management skills. Then there's the estates element, and actually designing the workplace so that it facilitates the type of things people want to do. So whether we need more sofas or whatever it is, whiteboards, collaborative space, so that if people are coming into the environment as a destination for collaborative working, that it's set up for that more than a load of desks. And then there's the technology. So those are the 3 factors we're looking at. But also we're looking at the framework for how we discuss flexibility. So one of the things we've come up with as a team is what I tend to refer to as our criminal framework of means, motive and opportunity, so that managers can have a discussion with their staff about how they're going to work flexibly. And a lot of times people are talking about the opportunity to work flexibly that's given by your job role or your persona. But that's only one thing, and I think you mentioned it. People have different setups at home. I have people in my team who are youngsters who are flat sharing, where it's not conducive. I heard the other day about someone who's had to move out of their flat because their flatmate does voiceovers and needs total silence, so she can't be on calls. So she's had to decamp. She's actually ended up in Spain. So you've got all sorts of different environments. So that's where the means and motive come in. We're saying it's not just the opportunity that your job role affords you, but it's the means, what you have at home, and you have the home environment, and then the motivation. What's your motivation in terms of working from home versus working in the museum? My dog is probably going to have galloping separation anxiety when I go back to work, so I might want to go back a little less in the first instance. And it's not a hard and fast algorithm that you turn the handle and something comes out of the bottom, but we're trying to facilitate the discussion with managers. So there's a bit of a framework, so managers don't feel this is a free-for-all, but neither does it feel like we're just moving a needle from all at home, all at the museum, to somewhere that we're all in the middle. It's true flexibility.
I think you should take the dog with you, first of all. But there is an awful lot of psychology here, because different types of people like to be in the office and interact with people and have that chat. I hate the water cooler expression, but that kind of thing. They like to see people. They like to be, eye-to-eye contact. And other people absolutely love working from home because it suits as Gavin said, it suits his lifestyle. He doesn't want to go to London anymore, and you can do your job well from home. Anybody else want to contribute on workflows and processes? Jason.
Yeah, I'm happy to. I agree with everything that Alison just said, and we're looking at exactly those same areas. To pick up on one part of that though, one of the things that I think this brings opportunity to do is work leaner and to digitize a number of the processes that we might have done much more manually beforehand, or which required somebody to go somewhere in person or to get something physically signed. I think that can help with making us a more productive workforce by actually moving to leaner ways of doing this and digitizing a number of those processes. We have a really, really good team of business analysts that work within my department, and they've spent more time working in the wider business than they have anything to do with the technology rollouts over the last year, because everything has been about, well, how do we use these online technologies to improve the way that we operate, the way that we fulfill our business functions. And that's really brought us together far better. I think digital and technology underpins almost everything that we do at the institution. It's now much more prominent, and people are much more open to that discussion about, well, how do we do this more effectively?
As Alison said, I think the real challenge is going to be the culture. You know, that there are people who will want to be in the office all the time, and that's fine. And there are a few people who would probably want to be working from home all the time. And there may be good reasons for that. But I think the challenge we'll face is team cohesion and building up relationships within the team and maintaining them. How do we facilitate that and encourage people to spend some time together? And we're doing some of it by suggesting that, if you spend more than a certain amount of time within an office, you can keep your own office space. If you don't, you're hot desking and, some of that. But I think it's something we're going to have to try and figure out over the coming months and years. But that's the hard bit as far as I'm concerned. We can make the technology work and we can make the processes work. But building a culture where we keep people as a team who are connected, who are not always sat next to each other.
Yeah, the team spirit. What have people experienced over the last 12 months that have been a challenge? What hasn't worked? Just before we close.
I think that maybe it's not that it hasn't worked, but it doesn't work as well. It's sort of following on from Alison and Rob's point. Is that ideation and that creativity and the spontaneity that you get when you're around your colleagues and those side conversations that trigger other conversations and ideas. The social cohesion. I would 100% back that comment. That we're all sat here looking at screens. You miss that, whatever it is, the 90% of other communication you have when you're with the person, the physical communication that you get. And I think that's the thing that hasn't worked as well. You're not as creative, I don't think, when you're sat in front of a screen. And I think the environment needs to support that. And so does your colleagues, And I just don't think you can replicate everything digitally.
The thing that I've found a challenge is, I have a team that report directly to me. We had regular scheduled meetings and one-to-ones and catch-ups and all of that. And that carried on and that worked fine. We used to just catch up around the favourite water cooler or just in the process of being in the various buildings in Europe that the team are in. And that just stopped for a long time. And maybe this is just me being dense. I kind of didn't become aware of that until someone pointed it out to me. And then I put in some more scheduled, just catch-ups with the whole team. And I think we have to put some process in place to replace the ad hoc chat by the coffee machine.
Even if it's the early morning meeting or giving people a break in meetings, not a whole hour, but that catch-up time. I mean, on the one hand, you get a glimpse into people's houses. On the other hand, you don't get that chat in the office, which is hard. Yes, Alison.
I think the thing that I found most challenging, again, it's not that it hasn't worked per se, but it's the fact that during this period of COVID and everything else, life is still going on. People are still having the normal ups and downs of life. So we've had 2 people in the team pregnant, and you just can't see because you only see them from the shoulders. We've had people who've had members of family ill. So there's been highs, there's been lows, which would normally happen and which you would normally celebrate together and enjoy together. And I think that builds that team empathy, and that I think is the thing I'm missing. It's much more difficult to have that empathetic engagement with your wider team on that casual basis about the highs and lows of life.
Having that chat time, yes. Maybe it can be built in. Shuvankar, do you want to add anything before we close? Because it's just gone 1 o'clock.
So, definitely. Being a techie, I would love to work from home. But in fact, personally saying, I feel very good if I see my all business analyst and all the developer is in front of me. The main problem is some people join in my team, they don't know each other, who is what. So that's the difficulty to get the productivity, basically, what we faced.
Well, thank you all very much. I've found it very interesting listening to you, and I'm sure you've learnt from each other. It's very good to share experiences, good and bad. So thanks for sharing on this Studio at Home roundtable, discussing workplace trends.